Hey, it's Anastasia with yet another tutorial. I'm very happy to welcome you, and today we're going to create this pattern. I made it originally with C++, but hey, I just woke up, it's 2 a.m., I can't sleep anymore, so I thought why not? It would make a very good exercise for you guys, and well, it will make me wait until I can catch the first train to work. So yeah, we're going to use Houdini and VEX, which I just tested, took me like, I don't know, 5-10 minutes, so yeah, it's going to be quite a quick one, and let's dive into it. So here we are inside of Houdini, and one of the first things I would like to do is actually set my background to dark. And we will grab a geometry. We don't need a file, but we will need a wrangle node. And our first wrangle will be responsible for only creating the circle points. So let's call it circle points. We will work with x and that dimension, so we're not going to account for y's. And yeah, let's start. So first we want to put it to detail, so it runs only once. Let's bring it bigger as usual. So we will need to have a couple of controls. So let's comment it out as user controls. And one of the first things we want to know is how many points do we need. So int sample, and apparently I can't spell sample, so it's a channel integer of sample. We would want to know the radius, so float radius. It's going to be a float, so no I in channel, so radius. And I think that's it for now. Oh, no. One more thing is where it's origin. So origin, and we'll call it origin position. So let's apply, and now if we press this, all of this will be created for us. Oh, and our original position is, yeah, because I forgot to put V here. Unfortunately, now I have to go and delete this origin position. So come on, let me delete it. Yes, thank you. So apply accept. So now if I apply and I press this again, it will create, yes, perfect. So original position, I will leave it at 0, 0, 0. Sample, let's start with something like 100 points and radius of 1. And yeah, let's start. So I will use quite a standard formula for making a circle, for which we would need to know the angle, which I will call theta, and we will start with 0. And we will want to know the step, because what we want to do is we want to take all of our circle, which is 360 degrees, or 2 pi, and we want to divide it by the number of samples we want. So we will kind of know the step of angle. So I will call it step angle, which is 2 pi, which we're going to define in a second, divided by our sample. And I will convert the sample to float right away. And in terms of 2 pi, let's define it. So it's a float, 2 pi, which is, and I have this number copied, so this is the number, and we just need to multiply it by 2. So this is our 2 pi, and this is our step angle. So what we want to do is we just want to say while theta is smaller than our 2 pi, so it didn't complete a full circle, and apparently I always spell 2pt, we want to run this loop. And in this loop, every time theta will be bigger by this step, so step angle. So inside of this, we want to find x and z position, because that's the dimensions we're going to work with. And let's identify them right away. So it's float x and z. And what we want to have here is, first of all, we want to take the origin x, and then we want to add to it cosinus of theta multiplied by radius. And z will be origin dot z plus sinus of theta multiplied by radius. If you're not sure what I'm doing here, just Google circle formula in x and y dimensions, and you will get this formula almost immediately. So once we have that, we now want to make a vector out of it, so we can feed it into our add point function. So vector position, yeah, just call it position, and set. So what we want to set is x. We want to take our origin y, just in case we input any value in here, and then z. And now we can add a point, so 0, and we will add it to the position and apply, accept, no errors, and as you can see, we have exactly 100 points. Ta-da! Beautiful. So that is our circle points. And yeah, you can see we can translate it and nothing breaks. Beautiful. So I'll reset it to 0, 0, 0. And yeah, let's test if we have more samples, because we have a bigger radius. Yes, everything works. Beautiful. So that is our circle points. So now what we want to do is we want to have a wrangle for connections. So what do I mean these connections? Connections, multiple, please. Yeah, I think it would make more sense if I illustrate it to you. So let's imagine this is our circle with 16 points. And what I mean by connections is, if you remember our GIF, we had a lot of lines going on. But they actually had a very, very simple rule, which is basically we will take a point, let's say we start at point 0, and we will connect it to a certain offset point. So let's say we are offsetting a number of 5 every time. So that's what we will do. We will connect 0 to 5, then 1 we will connect to 6, 2 we will connect to 7, and so on until we complete the full circle around. However, what we want to do is we want to modify this rule a bit and add a bit more complexity, let's put it this way. And we don't want a static offset. So let's say that, yes, 0 will still connect to 5. But let's say that with every point we want to add 1. So 0 will connect to 5, 1 will connect not to 6 but to 7, because now we will offset by 6. 2 will connect not to 9 anymore, because now we don't add 7, we add 8. And 3 will connect to plus 9, which is 12. So, and 4 will connect to 10. And as you can see, we start getting a different pattern. So if we actually complete the loop, we will get quite a different visual outcome. And that is what I want to implement inside of Houdini. And this offset, which I'm talking about, so we have like something like, oh, I don't have my tablet with me right now, so I have to type. So we have a constant offset, which was in this case 5. Let me make it bigger. And then we have this additional offset, where we say that we increment by 1 with every point. But in our case, or at least in the example of GIF I made with C++, this additional offset, yeah, my very beautiful mouse art, but this additional offset was actually controlled by a sine function. And that sine function, oopsie doopsie, come on, let me, yeah, and that sine function was of something of resampled version of point number, which I'm going to illustrate you now inside of Houdini. So before we implement this additional offset concept, let's focus on making a very simple first step. Let's make it just with a constant offset. So for that, we will need to know this constant offset. So let's create an integer constant offset. And why an integer? It's because we have to connect it to point number, and point number is an integer. So something I have to point out to you, in my C++ example, I was not actually tying it to the point number, but rather I was tying it to the angle. So it's a small disclaimer right away that this is a bit of an altered version of what I did in my GIF, but it still yields some very nice visual outcomes. So let's continue. So constant offset is a channel I. Let's create it constant offset. And for every point, we want to know its neighbor. So what point are we actually going to connect to? And the neighbor is our current point plus constant offset. However, what are we going to do if, for example, we have a point number? Oh, let's see, where is the last number? Oh, lost it. Yeah, 99. And if we add, let's say, 5, it's already 104, but we don't have a point 104. And to fix that, we just want to say that we want to modulo of endpoints. So whenever we exceed the number of points we have, we will just go back to 0. So apply, I think that should be fine. Yes. Let's comment this as a user controls. We're going to have more. And yeah, so now what we want to do is just want to create a line. So create a connection line. So what we want to do is int line and add primitive. And it's going to be a polyline. And now we just want to add vertices. So add vertex. we want to add the current point, and we want to add the neighbor point. So apply and accept, and something is wrong, and oh yeah, I forgot to tell that we need to add it to line, otherwise it doesn't know what it's adding to. So not linear line, so apply and accept, and currently nothing will work because we do not have anything but constant offset, and as you can see, something is happening, but you really have to put quite a big number if you have a lot of samples to actually see some things. So yeah, let's put something like 15, and you can immediately tell that we have a pattern going on, a pattern I was talking about and illustrating in Photoshop. So let's make it bigger, and yeah, and the bigger you make it, the smaller the inner radius will become. So you can play around with it, and if you go to minus, it just will repeat itself. So yeah, nice. Let's leave it at 30 for now. So that step is done. Very easy, right? So what we will do next is add concept of additional offset. So for the additional offset concept, so let me comment it out, additional offset. For this additional offset, we will need to use sine function, as I mentioned before, and I will actually call it sine offset because it makes sense, that's what it is. So for now, we will not identify it. But before we actually write it, I want to clarify one very important point with you. So if you Google for a sine function, that's what you will get, and that is very, very important. And why is it important is because we want our sine, well, we don't have to, but in this case we will, go from -1 to 1. And for that, let us have it make the full journey from 0 to 1, 0, -1, and then back to 0. So for that we need 2 pi. And later we will manipulate this value. Maybe we want actually to go twice. It is actually tying to a very interesting concept of variation of the pattern you can get out of this very simple setup. So again, we will need to know what pi is, so we will have to have a float pi. Oh, I don't have it copied anymore. Let's go back here and have this one. Go back to our connection, and yes, so I will work not with 2 pi, but just with pi here. So yeah, we have this pi. So what we want to do now is we want to fit our point number to go not from 0 to its last point, but actually from 0 to 2 pi. And to do that, let us create a float, which we will call fit point number, and we will fit the current point number that goes from 0 to number of points. I want to fit it from 0 to our pi, and we will multiply it by 2 here. And our sinus offset is basically sinus of our fit point number. So currently our sinus goes from -1 to 1. So in here, when we have this neighbor, we'll actually put it, and we will comment it out. Let's say find neighbor point for the connection. So if we just do it like this, and we just put it here, sinus offset, it's all nice and well, but we're going to offset only by 1 point, either in minus or in plus. I mean, that's not really much, is it? So what we want to do is we actually want to create a new user control, which we will call it this additional offset concept. So additional offset, and we will create. And why am I always putting, by the way, integers? Because technically you can get a float. But as I mentioned before, we are closely tied to the point number, and point number is always an integer. So we're not actually calculating any new positions. We are using like the points to drive the position. And as I mentioned before in my C++ example, I'm actually calculating the position rather than the point. But in this VEX example, I decided to just go with points. But of course, you're free to remake it slightly. It's not a big change to make it actually calculate the position. Then perhaps you just need to merge these two nodes into one inside of circle points. But yeah, going back to our additional offset, it's actually additional offset range. Let's put it like that, because it is not constant. So let's be a bit more explicit in our naming. what it is complaining about. Yeah, we have, yeah, because it's here, we will just say it's an integer, and we will multiply it by our additional offset. So apply and accept. So currently we're not going to have anything because our additional offset is 0. However, if we start adding something, let's say, oh, something funky is going on. So let's see where we went wrong. So yes, the problem was that I was first converting the sinus to integer and only then multiplying with additional offset. So make sure that you first multiply with additional offset by putting the brackets here, and then you convert it into an integer. So now, if we start putting numbers, as you can see, we start getting a pattern. So, and the cool thing about it is that we can actually modify not only the additional offset, we also can modify the phase. So let me put 4, and look how interesting it gets. So yeah, you can play around with it, and I will actually make a control out of the phase. So let me do that. So int phase, or actually this time it can be a float. So phase and channel phase, apply, accept. Let's create it here. And oh yeah, I haven't connected it actually. Let's do this phase here. And yes, look how interesting it can get. One of the interesting ones I like is 1 divided by 8, but you have to get into very high numbers to actually start seeing something. And as you can see, look how beautiful that is. And it gets very noisy in terms of coloring. So what I'm actually going to do, and it's the same thing I did in my C++ example, as I want to color. Let's resample. I actually didn't resample. In this way, we're just going to have a bit more control. And what we want to do is just have another wrangle, which will go coloring. We will run for every primitive, because now every primitive, if I actually isolate one primitive, you can see that we have these nice points going on. So what we want to do is we actually don't want a constant color, we want a gradient. And the gradient is very easily achieved with a ramp. So what we want to do is first we want to grab all the points. So grab all the points from the primitive, and let's do that. So it's a prim points of the current primitive. And we will run for every index inside of that array. So index I equals 0, I is smaller than the length of our array, I++. And what we want to do inside is we actually want to fit that index, so we will code float fit. And fit is, we're going to fit our index that goes from 0 to length of our array. And we want to fit it to 0 to 1 to actually fit it into our ramp. So now our fit is going to be channel ramp, which we're going to call color gradient. I guess that would make more sense because it's not really a color, it's a gradient. And we're going to just put it our fit. And now we just need to convert it into a vector. So let's create a vector color, and we just set to fit, fit, and fit. And now we just can set point attribute. We will set the color of our point I, and we want the color and set. So what we are doing now is we're taking the I index of the array and we are setting color vector to its color attribute. So apply, no errors, it's always good. So let me actually disable point number, and as you can see already we go from black to white because it's just we have a very constant gradient. So now we actually have to invert it. And what I want to do is I want to have a B-spline here as well. B-spline, I want more points, please. This is also B-spline. Yes. Yes, something like that. So now we actually, let's not isolate one, and ta-da! Beautiful, right? How awesome is that? So let me actually have something more here, and look how beautiful it is. And our face, for example, let's put our 4, and now it's going to be a huge one. And let's just do this. And look how beautiful it is. Oh my god, I just like it. I like it a lot. I like to play around with it. I played maybe way too much with it, but one of the other things I like is actually, let's put something a face of, let's say, 7 multiplied by 2. And why am I putting such a number is, you'll see in a second, that's, you probably already recognize, that's my GIF. And now is the magic, because as you remember, we multiplied by 2, because pi multiplied by 2, it goes around the full circle. But here's the awesome thing, with 7, we actually control the number of, well, let's call it pockets, because let's count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That is exactly the number we have here, so we can actually control how many of those we want. So let's say I put 14, and now we have more of them. Let's say I want only 3, and I have only 3 of them. How cool is that? And we can control the coloring and everything. You can maybe even animate it, I don't know. Maybe, I don't know, how does it actually look inverted? I never wondered. Oh, that actually also looks kind of neat. But anyway, yeah, let me put it all back. Stop playing around and wasting time. And then another cool feature I wanted to show is if we go back to 1 divided by 8, and we actually go into negative. I think it also create quite an interesting pattern, because as you can see, we have kind of more density on the border and less density in the center, which I also found to be very interesting result. Yeah. And one last finishing touch to actually recreate the full look of my GIF is we want to create another wrinkle. We want just to connect this kind of dotted line, which is also very easily done. So what we want to say is that if our point number is divisible by 2 without any leftover, so to say, then we want to connect it to the neighbor, and our neighbor is again point number plus 1. I can't hit the keyboard at this late hour of night. So yeah, so what we want to do is we want to modulo out of n points again, so it doesn't exceed our point count. And we just want to have another line. So int line is our add primitive, 0 polyline. Yeah, and we want to add vertex to this line of our current point, and add vertex 0 to this line again, and of the neighbor. So apply intercept. So yeah, and as you can see, we have a dotted line, and let's actually create a poly wire so it is thicker, at least visually. Yeah, now it's going to be very thick. Let's make it smaller, and let's merge them together. So yeah, now you have this interesting setup. Feel free to play around with it. I will actually put it back to the GIF I had. And now it's a too big number. But yeah, play around with it. If you discover some other interesting, cool stuff to do with it, please send me a link or a screenshot. I would love to see like where your imagination takes you. And yeah, thank you for watching. Enjoy. Bye bye.